Time for another board game review, and this time we have the game Paperback Adventures. This was sent to me by Fowers Games and is designed by Tim Fowers and Sky Larson with art by Ryan Goldsberry. Now this is the core box, but in order to play the game you need a character box. So they sent me 3 of them, but I'm going to show you just for an example, the damsel box. But yeah, you just can get different boxes, but you gotta get at least one. This is also primarily a solo game. There are 2-player variants, but it's really kind of meant to be played 1 player, so I'm gonna be showing you how to play it that way. Let's get to it. So how Paperback Adventures works is it's essentially a 1-player campaign little experience where you use a character. In this case I'm using Damsel, and you go through different lackeys and bosses trying to defeat them in your journey. So you advance through each enemy by defeating them, and you defeat enemies by playing words that cause enemies to lose HP, but enemies will also attack back. This here is your health counter. If it ever reaches 0, you are done. You can also never heal above your max HP. Same thing for enemies. Enemies' HP are tracked the same way and such. Now, this here shows you what the enemy is going to do. So you always know in advance, in this case, the rats in the sewer, they're going to deal 4 damage when they activate. If an enemy's health reaches 0, you flip them from stage 1 over to stage 2. In this case, their HP would then reset to 10, and then you have to fight them 1 more time. So, how the game works is you have cards in your hand, and you have to make a word. In this case, I have RTBI. Let's say I go with, I'll make the word rib. Now, when you play your word, you can splay them different ways. You can splay them like this, or you can splay them like this. The reason why it matters are these icons, and also whatever card's ability you can see on top. Now, if I want to attack the rat here, then I would want to display it like this, because these sword icons can do damage. If, however, I was worried about taking damage, I could do it this way and block. Blue symbols like this are energy. You track energy with the blue little metal counter here, and that can be used to activate certain powers and items and stuff. So why don't we go through a turn? So I'm gonna play rib. That's gonna be 4 damage. So 4 damage to the rats. I also get 1 block and 1 energy. So I can get an energy and I'll block damage, 1 damage this turn. Except this top card also is gain 3 shield. So I actually can block 4 damage this turn. The enemy will then activate. In this case, they deal 4 damage. That doesn't do anything because I blocked it. So we're good. Then the top card you played gets put in the fatigue pile. That means for the rest of this fight, you cannot use that card. The other cards go into your discard pile, along with whatever letters you didn't use in your hand. The enemy action indicator will then move. So in its next turn, it's going to be immune. When it's immune, it can't lose HP for any reason that turn. Then you draw 4 cards for your next hand. Pretty straightforward in terms of how you play. Oh, you can write head for your next word if you wanted. Wild cards, you always have a wild card you can use if you need the extra letter. However, if you don't use this wild card, you get an extra energy at the end of your turn. There are also items that let you get a letter of your choice. These are a little bit different in that they help you spell the word, but they don't give you energy. Instead, you just activate the ability of the card underneath it and fatigue that card instead. So again, these cards and wild cards never go into your actual deck. So almost every enemy has a weak spot. In this case, it's the E for the enemy vowel. So you can use this vowel to add to your word if you need it. What's also very useful about enemy vowels is that the top ability is advance the enemy's action indicator by 1. If the enemy is about to do something you really don't want it to do, you can, account for it. So let's say I made the word eat. This would do 2 damage, give me an energy, and I could move the counter so that it's not immune this turn, if I want it. However, that means this card would then be fatigued for the rest of the battle. There are different statuses called hexes and boons. Hexes are purple skulls and boons are crowns. You mark both of those using this, the purple and yellow my counters respectively. And depending on the character, they do certain things. So for Damsel here, she has a venom vial. And so depending on how much energy and skulls you have, the enemy has, the enemy loses HP equals the number of skulls on them. Spend energy and skulls according to the chart above. So if you have a whole bunch of energy and skulls you can use, you could take like 10 HP plus off of a boss at once. Boons are positive effects. I'll see if I can find some later, but they essentially just are different enemies and stuff, and characters use them in different ways. There are also item cards, like these dashing boots. This one says, if an enemy attack would do 4 or less damage to you after blocking, it deals 0 instead. You can only use them once per turn. You can tap them if you need to remember. Oh, here's a boon card. So the Bandolier, you can spend 1 crown to search your deck and discard pile for any card and place it in your hand and then shuffle your deck if you need a certain card. MacGuffins are cards that you can unlock. These do not require you to spend energy. They just give you a power, like the cocktail fork. Whenever your word plays right, you gain 1 shield. The wooden stake, whenever your word plays left, you gain 2 attack. Here's another example. The childhood toy, when you gain this MacGuffin, draw 5 from the item deck and choose 1 to keep. The North Pole, the first time each battle you would draw a card but have no cards to draw, you may draw any card from the fatigue pile instead. There are also boss MacGuffins you can get only a couple times during the game. Here's an example of one. Spinning Wheel. At the end of each turn, the enemy loses 3 HP if they have 5 or more skulls or hexes on them. Now, sometimes you get what are called penalty cards. In general, they have a negative effect if you don't use them in your word. So for this one, if this is in your hand at the end of your turn, you lose 2 energy. Penalty card, after you play this, move it to the bottom of the penalty deck. So once you play it, then it goes away. Now, once you beat a lackey or boss, you reset your hexes and energy. The health and boons stay the same. And then you shuffle everything, including your fatigue pile. Then there can be different sort of rewards depending on the card. So there's a lot of these random cards here that give you different things. So this one says, draw 2 cards from the library and choose 1 to replace a card in your deck. Or, and then draw 2 items and keep both of them. Or it might say, draw a card from the library to replace a card, gain 3 boons. So as you progress, you will start to get more cards added to your deck, more items, and you can even do upgrades where some of the cards are double-sided. You can flip them. So for example, here we've got a K card, pretty strong, 3 swords. It has a sneak attack, which gives 4 skulls. What a sneak attack means is if there are no cards in your discard pile, you gain that bonus. There are certain keywords depending on the character. And if you upgraded this card, then you would also get to heal 2 upon a sneak attack. Make it all the way to the final boss in book 3, and you win the game. There are some optional plot twist cards and other things, but that's basically the general flow is draw your cards, make a word, do damage or block. The enemy will trigger their effect and then move on to the next effect and so on. If you kill their stage 1 side, they flip over to a stage 2 side. One thing I forgot to mention that's pretty fun is that if you manage to knock out an enemy's HP in stage 1, then they don't activate that turn. That's pretty crucial. What happens is it's stunned, it takes no action, and then it flips over. And also what's great is surplus damage or HP loss carries over to stage 2. So if it had like 3 HP left and you did 6 damage, not only does it get knocked out for that turn, but it's gonna take 3 damage on its next phase. So the damage isn't wasted. Other than that, though, I think that's pretty much it. I'll show you a couple more of some of the other cards, like R. If your word is three letters or less, gain 1 attack for every attack in your word. Some items here. Diver's Helmet. Gain 3 block this turn and draw 1 more card next turn. Oh yeah, this is the energy cost here, if that wasn't clear. Toxic Dart. Discard any card in your hand and give 2 hexes, then flip this card. Chaos Emblem. Fatigue a card in your hand and draw a card from the penalty deck and add it to your hand to gain a boon, then flip the card. So these all have different sort of effects as well. Oh, I forgot to mention, at the end of the game, the shop here, this is a way you can upgrade or get different costs, or different items from MacGuffins. They cost crowns to get them, so you can get, more cards, MacGuffins, items, so on and so forth. But yeah, I think after that, that's pretty much it. Just play words, attack the enemy, they attack back and forth. Just get as far as you can. But that's the game. So I'm a big fan of the original game. I actually forgot to mention this is based off an original game called Paperback by the same designer. I love that game. I think this is a really solid solo game. Now this review is actually going to be kind of interesting because I'm going to talk about everything that's good about this game, which there's a lot. And then I'm going to talk about actually why ultimately I'm probably not going to keep it. But let me stress, if you are a solo gamer, I highly recommend this game. There are so many interesting choices. I love displaying your cards aspect of deciding which way to display them and what ability needs to be on top, what symbols you need to get. It's really, really clever. I also like that the top cards are taken out of the deck and fatigued. It has that very kind of Gloomhaven vibe of, okay, I got a finite number of cards. I got to use them wisely because turn by turn, I'm losing them. Presentation-wise, art looks great. The game includes sleeves for all the cards, which is very impressive. Not to mention that upgrading the cards by flipping them is nice and satisfying. The little markers are nice metal. There was no, no expenses spared. It looks and feels really nice to play. The MacGuffins and items are a lot of fun. They got some nice juicy abilities that feel really rewarding. The different enemies and rewards, I didn't get too far into showing the different enemies because I didn't want to spoil too much, but it gives the game a nice satisfying roguelike feel. They all feel very different. One small gripe is I think the difficulty can get kind of swingy, which is in the nature of a roguelike. So it's not necessarily a terrible thing, but then here's where we get into the second half of the review. So, as someone who plays a lot of board games, mainly multiplayer, a solo game really needs to be a very specific type of experience to stick around in my collection. Whenever a solo game gets placed in front of me, my first thought is always, would I prefer this as an app? That's not an entirely fair question, but it's always a big factor for my collection. Because this game has such swingy difficulty and you can kind of just sometimes die, and if you die you have to start over, it's kind of a hassle to set everything up again. It's not a easy game to just bring out immediately. There's a lot of little piles and things. I prefer board games, or at least solo board games, with a quick reset time. This one, the thing is, setting up for it is worth it because it's usually a very lengthy experience. You're getting to go through different bosses and get your experience. But with the benefit of an app, you can go, okay, let's just do another run, start over. This game feels a little more frustrating when you lose because it's like, okay, I gotta reset everything. It's kind of a drag. Now, don't get me wrong. Again, if you are someone who likes solo games or word games or both, or especially if solo games are your only option, I highly recommend this game. I think it's very good. It's just kind of a hassle to set up and tear down. So for my preferences, the original game Paperback, which is not an adventure game at all, it's just more like a word building, deck building game, is still preferable to me. For me, I even prefer the original Paperback over Hardback, which is like a more complex sequel. I just like the simplicity of it. But this game, for solo players, for people looking for like a roguelike, deck building, word game experience, definitely check this out. It's a smart design, looks great, and it's a very satisfying and cleverly designed game.